It's the Fitness Lab Pittsburgh podcast, a new episode every week. A podcast about movement, part of making your life complete. Fitness Lab Pittsburgh, aka FitLabPGH, brings you interviews with people in the Pittsburgh area who understand movement is part of what makes life complete. Looking for a new movement idea or just want to hear interesting stories about people who make movement a priority? This is the podcast for you. Whether you consider the gym, dojo, or fitness studio your third place, or just want to learn more about movement, activity, and fitness to enhance your life, give FitLabPGH a listen. We interview locals in the Pittsburgh area who make Pittsburgh a great place to move. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Subscribing is free and gives you notifications when we release new episodes. Each podcast episode will be long enough to pique your interest and short enough to hold your attention. Have an idea for an episode? Know somebody we should interview? Or just want to connect with us? Drop us an email, fitlabpgh@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter or Instagram at FITLABPGH. Already a fan of FitLabPGH? Check out our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast for movement professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers weekly interviews with movement professionals featuring topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope you enjoy our next interview, starting now. FitLabPGH is back with another podcast. It should be relatively quiet where we are today because the Steelers are currently playing, although there are a few people. I have not told today's guest that the pressure is on her because we are doing an interview in a coffee shop, and every time we do interviews in a coffee shop, we end up with pretty good interviews. So, Jo, no pressure, but you have to stay with the rest of the people and make sure that we have a good interview, which I have no doubt that we will. We are here today with Jo Rupp, who made the decision at a young middle age, I think is the correct term, to go back to school. And she is a lifetime runner. And if you're listening to the podcast that we actually released today, the day that we recorded, we talked a little bit about each person that we've interviewed and our memory. My memory of Jo is going to be the fact that she has been running for 30 plus years and her only injury has been a sprained ankle.
That's true.
So I think what she needs to do is go home and buy a lottery ticket on the way home, because clearly she's not only skilled, but also exceedingly lucky. So we are with Jo Rupp, who lifetime runner, high school runner, college runner, still a runner, and was nice enough today to come out and talk to FitLab Pittsburgh only a couple hours after finishing the EQT 10 miler.
Yes.
So what I always like to start out with people that we interview for FitLab Pittsburgh is, are you a Pittsburgh native? If you are, why are you still here? If you're not, what brought you here?
I am not a Pittsburgh native. I'm actually from the Harrisburg, York, and Lancaster area. After college, I followed a boy out here after he lost a job. We were together for a while, and after we split, we both stayed here. He moved further into rural Pittsburgh, and I live just outside of the city.
And I'm curious, in college, you were a cross-country and track runner, but what was your major in college? Because it's a little different from what you got your master's degree in.
Yes, I started off as a biology major, and, if you don't go to class as a biology major, you sort of miss out on a lot of important things. And with biology and chemistry and the physics classes, I pretty much didn't go to class if it was raining or snowing or sunny, because football and track were more fun. So I ended up changing my major to business administration with a management concentration. Long-time
30-plus year runner. I'm always interested for people who are adults and are active, is whether you were active as a child, how you got started in running, and whether that occurred because mom and dad said get out the door and don't come back till dinner time, or if mom and dad were active and it was kind of like that was what the family did. They did some sort of movement activity.
No, my mom and dad, they're not very active. In fact, my mom will admit she hates exercise. I think when I was little, we had horses for a while, and all I wanted to do was ride or play horses with my friends. So at recess, I was always outside running. In gym class, we would always run the 100-meter dash, and I would finish last. And it was sort of disheartening. I heard about distance running, but all I could kind of comprehend was marathon distance. And I knew as a kid that wouldn't work. So in 5th grade for track and field, I signed up for the 100-meter dash and the 800-meter run because only 2 other girls were in the 800, and I really just wanted to get a ribbon. So I knew I could beat the one. I'd get at least second, and I was going up against the fastest girl in the class. And on that day, in jeans, on a grass 200-meter oval, I became the fastest girl in the class. When I beat her, I can still tell you my time.
I think that's something that all lifetime runners have. I know we interviewed Daniel Caulfield, the track and cross country coach at California University, and he told a story about winning a race in Ireland, I think maybe as a 5th grader, barefoot. So
wow.
jeans and successful, barefoot and successful. How did you gravitate? Obviously that was success. Did you do other activities as a high schooler, or was that the moment that you said, I'm going to be a runner?
I was in marching band, but I have the coordination of a baby giraffe. So running was kind of my only option. I was late to learning how to swim. I could do it, but I'm self-taught because I wanted to do triathlon after college. I don't do those very often. And so, I fell in love with that 800. That was my thing. And in high school, on one of the first few days of school, my locker partner, my best friend, was right outside the track coach's classroom. And she told him about me, and the first thing he said was, "What's your 400 time?" And I told him, and I watched his eyes light up. And that's the end of that story.
How did you feel? I know this is true of most track and field athletes. Most athletes, they want to play one sport or do one event, but if they're any good or they go to a place that's relatively small, they're told you can do that event, but you have to do other events. And even though you finished a 10-miler now, if you were an 800-meter runner, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in high school and probably college you ran cross country also?
Yes, I did.
Were you one of those shorter or middle distance runners who reluctantly ran cross country, or did you embrace the opportunity to do that?
I am one of those middle distance runners who was blessed to be able to have a wonderful cross country career. My first season I went to Millersville. My first season at Millersville, I didn't do my summer workouts for cross country, and that did me no favors. I ended up quitting. I came back for spring track, and I had a solid track season. Coach said to me, "You're going to do great things as an 800-meter runner, but you have to run cross country. When you get a season of cross under your belt, you're going to do fantastic." And he was right.
It's amazing how that base training helps.
I know. And then cross country was very good to me as well. After the first year, I went to Division II Nationals all 4 years while at Millersville. And the first 2 years I went with my team. The second 2 years I went as an individual. The team years were the greatest, but the first year was quite an eye-opener. And after that, it was just, I won the regional meet. The next 3 years I came in, I think at 13th place. And then or 15th, I think, at regionals. And the next 3 years, I won it. And it was, at that time, no one had won it 3 times in a row. So that was my claim to fame.
I'm curious, you said the first year you did none of the summer workouts for cross country, so obviously it was very difficult. Thinking back, what was the reason for not doing the workouts? You didn't enjoy it, you didn't think you need to, or stupidity?
Stupidity, mostly. And some of it was, I don't have to do it. And I guess I did not realize that if you go off to college, everyone is an all-star. And so you might have been number one when you were in high school, but when you get to college, you're going to meet a whole bunch of people that were better than you. And I guess I didn't think that was going to happen to me, and it did. And I should have known better, because Millersville at that time was known for always being a powerhouse in cross country and track.
I'm curious, did anybody who was a mentor to you then say, you really should do these workouts because it's going to be a problem or difficult when you end up at Millersville?
No. No one really did talk to me about that. In fact, I don't think anyone knew I was not doing my summer workouts. I just I kept it to myself. I wish somebody would have given me a foot in the tail, but, they'd have to know that you weren't doing it.
What do you think current day Jo advice you would give to 17 or 18-year-old Jo who said to herself, I don't need to do these workouts because I'm really good?
Oh, I have a ton of stuff to tell that young me, and one of them would be, don't be an ass. Do your workouts and work hard. But that said, quitting that first year might have been the best stupid thing I've ever done, because the next, the 4 years that I had after that, my cross-country career really took off. So, hindsight 2020, I don't think I would have had the same experience if I didn't make that mistake. So
you're clearly still running multiple years later. You were an All-American in college, and I'm always curious with people who are athletes at quite a high level, and All-American, whether it's Division 1, 2, or 3, is a high level of skill. At what point did you realize that I can't do this professionally? Did you try to do it after graduation, or did you have a realization, okay, I'm really good, I'm going to do this forever, but I'm not good enough to try to do it professionally? And I know with track and cross country, or actually track specifically, most of the good runners aren't in college, especially the middle distances and longer. They're post-college, and in some cases, if you get into longer distances, maybe even late 30s, early 40s.
As an 800-meter runner, I kind of knew my limitations. My PR was 2:13, and Coach said to me, you're not really an 800-meter runner. You're a 3,000-meter runner. You don't really belong in that race. And my heart was always there, because that's where I started. And to this day, I'll tell you, I'm an 800-meter runner. I'm not. But that's where my heart is. And I love that race. But I knew coming out of it, a 2:13 wasn't going to get me anywhere, and I wasn't fast enough to hit that 2:10 mark. I mean, I was close, but the gorilla fell all the time in the last 150 meters.
I think it's interesting when you talk to people who are successful in college and recognize themselves, they don't have delusions of grandeur. Similarly, I interviewed a number of months ago Don Moxley, who was a Big Ten All-American wrestler. And I asked him, how did you decide that you weren't going to try to go to the Olympics? And he said, well, what I did is I finished. I won my weight class. I got back to my dorm. I threw all my wrestling stuff out of my duffel bag. I put all my spring break stuff in the bag. I went on spring break for 2 weeks, and then I came home and thought about it and realized that the best heavyweight wrestler in the world was in the U.S., and I wasn't good enough to beat him, so I better find something else to do.
Coach kind of pushed me to the roads too right away, because there's a little bit of money in road racing. Not a lot. Not going to get rich on that. You're not going to make a life out of it. But you can go out there and coming off of college with a good 5K base, you might win $100 here or there. Sometimes depending on where you go. I think my biggest win immediately outside of college was $200, and not making a whole lot of money. That's a nice supplement. So he knew, and I kind of. To this day, I kind of still, I heard him. I'm listening.
Did you ever think after you won that first $100 or $200, I could really make a career of this road running? I could gradually work up, because some of the races, like we're doing this on the day of the New York City Marathon, and that's big bucks.
No, I didn't have those delusions of grandeur. I mean, I knew I was a solid competitor, and locally I would do well, but, in the grand scheme of things then, I just knew it was a local thing, and you're not going to give up trying to, live a normal life with a day job. You're not going to be able to train like they do. You can't just quit and go run.
I'm curious, what keeps you running then? I know that many people who run track and field in college, and many people who swim in college, when they finish, maybe they'll do it a year or two afterwards, and then that's it. They're done with that.
I think running... I love to run. I love to compete. There's something about race day. As a middle distance runner, I like to chase things. If it moves, I'm going to chase it. But it is also, it keeps me in balance. I call it my cheap anti-anxiety meds. I run at lunch a lot of the times, and I find that when I come back from a lunch run, I have, my mind clears most of the time, and I might have been struggling with something in the morning, but in the afternoon, I'm not saying I can solve the world's problems, but sometimes things look a little clearer. I'm like, all right, I got that done, and it's out of the way. And if I actually, if I don't get out the door at 12:30, I start to get even more anxious because I haven't gone yet. So a lot of it is just to kind of keep me on a level ground.
How do your coworkers feel about you going out and running? Because I know some places it's like there are groups of people that run, and other places you end up as the weird one.
Well, I work with a quirky bunch, and we all have our own oddities. But for the most part, I work alone. So, and I'm in a little, usually in a conference room. I'm an auditor essentially, and they put me in a back corner office. So if I come back and I don't look perfect, it doesn't matter. I mean, it does. I try to be presentable, but that's my thing. Actually, one of my coworkers started running a couple years ago to drop a few pounds, and I heard rumor that I might have been part of the inspiration behind that.
I'm also curious, year-round runner, because I know some people say if it drops below a certain temperature or if there's snow on the ground, I go inside. So are you an outdoor runner solely? Do you run on a treadmill in the winter?
Most of the time, I'm like postal, rain nor sleet nor snow. But if the walks are terrible, I do have a gym membership at Wright's Gym in Crafton, and I'm their resident runner in the wintertime. They don't mind if I'm training for a marathon and I'm on the treadmill for 20 miles or 3 hours. He's okay with that because most of the people that are there aren't there for the treadmills. They're there to lift heavy things.
800-meter runner in college, coach tells you, well, you're not really an 800-meter, you're longer, and you're sitting here across from me wearing a 10-miler shirt. You still classify yourself as an 800-meter runner, and yet there aren't a whole lot of 800-meter runs out there compared to road races. Is that why you've gravitated towards the road races?
Sort of, yeah. He pushed me there right out of college because of the money. And for the longest time, it's just what I did. There's a road race. But in recent years, especially after turning 40, the whole Masters track and field circuit, someone opened my eyes to that. And, as a middle distance runner, I've always wanted to kind of get back to that. And it's been really cool. I went to Grand Rapids a few years ago and I ran the 5K. This past winter, I went down to Maryland and ran in the indoor championships and got to run that 1,500 and 800. So,
how do your times compare to what they were in college?
Oh, they're horrible. I was at on a 200-meter oval. I was at 2:07 with a lap to go, and I was almost lapped by the winner. I could hear her coming down the stretch. They were announcing her name. Here comes Sasha. I better move because I was lapped the day before in the 1,500. She got me. And I just said, keep going. And I hit the wall early. It was a struggle to get across the line.
And that's the interesting thing about different endurance sports. I know running, probably your PRs for most people are in their 20s, maybe early 30s. There's actually an article in the New York Times this week about a runner who's 40 or 41 who's trying to PR. He's consistently been 240 to 245, and has gradually gotten slower and wants to see. He's hired a coach, and that's the direct opposite of swimming, which if anybody is involved with Masters swimming, we've interviewed Jim Thornton probably about a year ago, and swimmers actually can get faster because it's so technique oriented and because there isn't the pounding. My bucket list question that I always like to ask people that we interview, 2-part question. Most fun or enjoyable movement activity, in your case, since you're a runner, probably a runner that you've done in the past.
I am pretty much a runner. I do like to swim. I'm terrible at it. I have 2 speeds, slow and stop.
Do you have a favorite race that you've done in the past that whenever you're thinking is like, man, that was really a lot of fun, or do they kind of blur together?
Most of them do blur. I took on steeplechase. Last year was my first year in the sport. I didn't do any this year. I had one opportunity and I started the race, but it was 48 degrees. I didn't want to jump in that water. Actually, it was 38 degrees, I think. And I thought about how cold that was going to be when I hit the water. And I said, at 45 years old, you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have a coach telling you, you're going to run the steeple today, Joe. Nope, I'm going to run the 15.
And is there an activity, or more specifically, is there a race that's on your list that at some point I'm going to do this, or you're scheduled to do it, that you're really looking forward to?
I have looked into competing in the Masters Track and Field World Championships in the coming years. I know it's in Toronto in 2020. In 2022, it's going to be in Sweden. Is that right? I think so. I'd like to get to one of those. I probably won't make it into the final round in any of it. Steeplechase, though, if I run in that, I think it's a final. So I'll do okay there. But I'm probably not going to make the podium. And I'm okay with that, because to me at this point, it's just about the experience. I love the sport. I just want to play.
So a lifetime mover then.
I think so. I'll do it as long as I can. When I start climbing over barriers, I'll hang that up and go back to the open races, the 1500s and the 800s, and probably the 5,000 is where I belong.
I think I remember, I'm not sure if it's on the recording or not, but when I interviewed Coach Caulfield, he described a 70-year-old man when he was in Ireland who was a well-known coach demonstrating going over the steeplechase barriers. And Coach Caulfield said to him, he was like, that's what I want to be able to do, because he said his form was good. It wasn't like it was a struggle.
I can aspire to be that, I hope.
So you've described what you've done, your high school career, a little bit your college career, going to the roads. You said you're an auditor. And then you've done something a little bit different for most masters runners and people who run on the road. You made the decision a few years ago, I'm going to go back to school for something entirely different. What did you go back to school for? And I'm sure half of the people listening are going to be saying that's great, and the other half are going to be going, what, is she crazy?
A little both. I went to Cal U for sports psychology, and the reason that I did it was kind of to help my own performance as well as my husband's. We're both very competitive, and I thought, boy, if there's a way I can figure out how to settle my nerves, that would be great, because my college teammates will tell you I was the worst person to be around on race day. And even now, I get so nervous that I don't want to be around anybody. So I have used a lot of the things that I got in my classes to learn to settle my nerves. And I've used a lot of deep breathing, and I've started when I can to try to do a little bit of meditation. And it's helped so much, especially in the middle of a race when I'm looking at that person going, oh, I want to beat them, and I'm 3 miles into a 10-mile race, and I just kind of recenter and say, you do you, which is most important to me.
Has it helped you, do you think, improve your performance? Have you seen improved times, or too soon to tell?
I think too soon to tell. It's been a year. I had a really good fall last year. This year was kind of questionable, and I'm not sure what affected that so much. It's just kind of cyclical. I think coming off of track season, I did a little bit. I ran some college invitationals, and I can give the slow heat a good run for their money, but I was disappointed, I think, in myself, and it played into my training this summer, and I just kept saying, you know what, I'm not sure I should do this anymore. I don't know why I'm not running well, but I had a few surprise races. Actually, in the spring, I ran a 10K and a half marathon a couple weeks apart, and they were not supposed to be good races, because I said, I'm just going to do these to get through them with school, full-time work, trying to train and manage my household. It just wasn't supposed to come together. And the 10K surprised me. The half marathon was an even bigger surprise. It all fell into place, and I thought, okay, something must be going right. But then it fell apart in the summer, and it seems to be ending on a good note here with a couple of a good half marathon a few weeks ago, good 10-miler today. No complaints.
And I know some people listening are not running at the level you are and not running races every weekend. They just either want to get a T-shirt on occasion, or they hear, hey, the Pittsburgh Marathon, I've always wanted to do a marathon, and why not do it in my hometown? I think one of the questions is, you work full-time, you're married, for a while you were going to school, and people are going to say, I'd love to work out, but I just don't have the time. If you had 1 or 2 tips that you could offer people to make it. I mean, my excuse for being active is I have 2 dogs, and if I don't get out with them at least 4 or 5 times a week, they're going to be really rambunctious.
They're going to eat things.
Yes. Well, one of them has eaten the back door twice when she was a puppy, which I did not knock her for because she needed to go outside and I didn't pick up on the cues. But that right there gives me 4 or 5 hours a week, and it's kind of no excuse. It's a responsibility I've taken on. But some people, they don't have dogs, and I understand that. What are your tips, 1 or 2 tips to how you make time or how you've done it for essentially 30 plus years?
I think the biggest thing is if it's a priority to you, you will find a way to make it happen. The other thing is you don't have to just take up running. I know everyone hates my sport because most of the other sports that they played, running was their punishment. And, there are t-shirts that say that. Find something that you like to do. If you're into strength training, good, go do that. If you like biking, go do that. If it's just walking, just to get out the door, go do that.
I know I've been fortunate enough to interview a number of physicians, and I think that's the message they say. There are recommendations for the amount of aerobic fitness to have, the amount of resistance training, there's mind-body exercise, but their comment is, most people just don't move. So I think that's great advice. And it's not just runners. I've got a friend of mine, I got an email from him today. He just finished 2 hours on the bike trainer because he has his grandchild today, and he realizes if I don't get it done early in the morning, I'm not going to get it done. So I think setting a priority for something you enjoy is a great idea. Somebody in the Pittsburgh area is listening to this and they know there's all kinds of races, but they're not sure where to start. Where would they go to find somebody who could teach them to run? So hopefully they could be as lucky as you and not have anything worse than a sprained ankle.
I think a good place to start, I'm not a member, but Steel City Roadrunners is a good group to run with. They have all ability levels. They'll take on the beginners. They'll take on, if you have a little bit of experience behind you, they can accommodate. I mean, they don't write specific workouts for you, I don't think. I think they may have training plans to put together for the half marathon or for Pittsburgh Marathon. I say if you are new to the sport, that's not the distance you start at, though. Let's, baby steps. Let's start with maybe
Could you repeat that again, please?
Do not start with a half marathon. Start small. Baby steps.
And maybe I'm more intelligent than some people, or maybe I'm just recognize my limitations. Before I did an Ironman, I did a marathon and I did a 46-mile trail run. And I'm not a runner of your caliber, but my rationale was if I could somehow struggle through 46 miles, then running a marathon would be pretty easy. And it turns out it was. So I think that's great advice. Start small. And actually your comment on contacting Steel City Runners is good. We've interviewed Suzanne Natter, who's involved with the South Park Trail Runners, and I think she does some coaching with them. We've had the good fortune to talk to Jo Rupp. She is a lifetime runner. Went back to school to learn more about sports psychology because she thought it would help herself, and has some great advice that she's given you in the last couple of minutes as far as if you want to move, make it a priority. Think of it as you're putting movement in the bank for years from now. Pick an activity you like. I'm somebody who likes to be outside, so I think that's great advice. I've decided I don't go to yoga classes anymore. I don't go to group exercise classes because I don't enjoy it. And then finally, find somebody who knows what they're talking about in the activity that you do so that you can be successful. Jo, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to FitLabPGH.
Thank you so much for having me. I was so excited to be here.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of FitLabPGH, brought to you by Moving to Live. Intro and exit music is Marathon Man by Jason Shaw. Check out the show notes for contact info for our latest guests, links to other information mentioned in the episode, and links to our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast about movement and exercise for professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Your free subscription gets you notified when we release a new episode. Questions, comments, suggestions? Email us at fitlabpgh@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at FIT FitLabPGH, and like us on Facebook. If you enjoy our podcasts, please tell your friends about us and consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Make FitLabPGH a go-to place to learn more about movement in the Pittsburgh area. Until next time, keep on moving.